You are looking right now at a live scene in Kiev. This is the capital city of Ukraine in the evening. Clashes between protesters and security forces have resulted in at least 25 reported dead, hundreds injured. But just moments ago, we've got this unexpected development we want to tell you about. A reported truce between President Viktor Yanukovych and protest leaders. This, though, let's be skeptical here, according to the president's office. We haven't heard from the protesters yet, but the president's office is saying he and the leaders of the protests have called a truce. Now, details are still emerging. The news comes after Canada closed its Kiev embassy and ahead of an emergency meeting of European Union ministers set for Thursday. Obama, as we showed you earlier, President Obama in Mexico commented, saying if their killings continue, someone will be held accountable. Just who does he mean? We're not sure. Will this truce hold? If it doesn't, do sanctions bring an end to the deadly crisis? In Winnipeg, I'm joined by James Bezan, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Defence. He's been on the Ukraine file for a long time. The NDP's international development critic, Hélène Laverdière, has also been following it. She's in Quebec City. And, of course, so has the Liberal Foreign Affairs critic, Mark Garneau. Welcome, all of you. I know you've all been watching the situation closely and have been with us many times. Mr. Bezan, let me start with you first. What do you make of these reports? We're a bit skeptical of it, but of course things are happening literally by the second here. Tires are burning, people are dying, yet the president's office says there's a truce.
Everything's very fluid over there right now, Evan, and so we really don't know exactly what's happening. We are monitoring the situation, and those that have committed some of these atrocities are going to be held to account for the crimes that they've committed. But more importantly is, there's been this tweet out of the president's office from President Yanukovych. Until we get confirmation from the leaders of the Euromaidan, as well as from the opposition leaders to confirm it, I am, like you, very skeptical on whether or not this is true, especially in light of what's happened in the last 48 hours and what's happened today. Because you got to remember that up until 48 hours ago, things were going along fairly peacefully. The protesters had vacated the City Hall and other government buildings across the country. So they were engaged with the government in trying to find a peaceful settlement, with only a request that we go to early elections for both Parliament and for the President. Now, then in the last 24 hours, we've seen not only violence erupt on the streets, all instigated because of the Berkut, or the military riot police, moving in and trying to clear out the Maidan, and fires burning, and these running battles have been taking place. Live ammunition now confirmed being used on the peaceful protesters. And then today, they've started this new anti-terrorism sweeps, disrupting internet service, and disrupting cell service, and going out. Really, this is a police state that they've put in place, martial law, and are going out and arresting people without just cause, and confining them, including going into the hospitals again, and following people that are injured, taking them from the hospitals, and arresting them and imprisoning them. And, of course, we hear widespread allegations of torture and abuse.
Yeah, just to be clear here, you're looking at pictures that were taken earlier, but when we show you those live pictures of where the protesters are, you're seeing a lot of fires, and this is the live picture. Those aren't burning vehicles so much as we understand. Those are tires. There's essentially a perimeter that the protesters have set up to stop the Ukrainian police and the government forces from essentially running them down and arresting them. So you get a sense this is a real standoff, and those burning tires are what's separating them. Hélène Laverdière, your comment on the truce and potentially the consequences of violence here.
Look, it would be good if it were a real truce, but we don't know that yet. It's new. We have to see. Indeed, we've heard from the President's office, haven't heard from the protesters. It would be good if it were a real truce, but it's also a truce that must lead to a real dialogue. I mean, the protesters are there now because they've been let down before. A real dialogue is the only acceptable way out of this situation. So I think we should remain cautious, but who knows? If there's a real truce, then that's good news.
All right. We're all watching this. There's a fair bit of skepticism. Everybody has skepticism. We haven't heard from the protest groups a lot on this alleged truce that the President's office has talked about. Mark Garneau, where are you when you hear about this and the ongoing situation?
Well, of course, we'll watch to see what happens, but we've been watching it for the past 3 months, Evan, of course, and the situation has deteriorated with the killing of 26 people. There's no question things have ramped up in a very, very serious way, and from our perspective in the Liberal Party, we are at the point now where we believe that the government no longer has any credibility whatsoever. There's been this sort of back and forth, but things have steadily gotten worse. The fabric of the country is starting to seriously fray, and the Yanukovych government has no credibility whatsoever at this point. We would like to see Canada press our allies and work with our allies to call for new elections in Ukraine under international supervision, because we do not believe that this is a salvageable situation. The people of the Ukraine have now very clearly indicated that they are past the point of no return, and at this point the only way to resolve this is to have elections which would be supervised so that a new leadership can emerge from this country, and hopefully stability.
Very quickly, Obama said there would be consequences today if the violence doesn't end. EU foreign ministers will be gathering in Brussels to discuss sanctions against the Yanukovych government. Mr. Bezan, will Canada consider further sanctions, pardon me, further sanctions against Ukraine if a true settlement fails?
Yeah, we've already said, we've already gone farther than any other country in the sanctions we brought forward. We're the only ones that have targeted high-ranking officials and suspending their travel visas. But it is important that the European Union, like-minded countries and allies, including the United States, pull the same levers we're pulling. We're prepared to go farther. That's what the discussions are taking place with Minister Baird and foreign ministers across Europe tomorrow. I know that Minister Baird and Minister Sikorski, who's the foreign minister of Poland, have been working very closely on making sure that we bring about the pressure on the Yanukovych regime and those that are influencing him to make sure that we start seeing the changes and peace return stability to Ukraine. Mark's right. We got to have early elections. This government has no credibility at all with the Ukrainian people. They've been protesting for 3 months. They don't trust him. Even with him firing his cabinet, it hasn't worked. Prime Minister Harper has met with President Obama on this issue on the margins down in Mexico, and there is going to be continued discussions on how we move concertedly together. Got to remember, with a place to hit the Ukrainians where it hurts is right in the pocketbook.
Right.
And when you got Yanukovych and the oligarchs and the high-ranking officials storing all their money in German, Swiss, French, English bank accounts, and including Cyprus, that's where the targeted sanctions have to be, and that's why the European Union is so important in moving ahead with targeting those individuals.
And I got a couple seconds left. You know, one of the key players in the Ukrainian situation, of course, is Vladimir Putin. Of course, he's now obviously showcasing himself and his country at the Sochi Olympics. Meantime, Ukraine's on fire. And the other issue is the crackdown on freedom of speech there. And I want to show all of you a new video. It was shot today of the Russian punk band Pussy Riot. They went to Sochi. And I warn our viewers, they try to put on a, here they come, they're coming into a square, and they're going to put on a performance. There they are, they got their backpacks on. Now watch what they do. They put on their hoods. This is what they usually perform in, and they're going to make a protest. They've got some supporters there. They start to sing, and these are the Cossack security guards. They come in, they pepper spray them. Now look at this. The women continue, and then they start whipping them with horse whips. There's one. First one guard comes. This goes on. It's all videotape. And they whip them. They whip a cameraman there who continues. Then more guards come, whip off the hoods. They start to kick and beat the young women. Now remember, these women have already been in prison. This incident is they're 20 miles away from the Olympic site, okay? And as we watch this, as they throw the women to the ground, they kick them, they beat them. Let me start with you, Mr. Garneau, and we'll go quickly down. As we look at this video, what do you make of this?
Well, first of all, I have tremendous admiration for the women in Pussy Riot for standing up very courageously for the the rights, the freedom to speak out against the measures that have been put in place by the Putin government. It's very, very clear that Russia still doesn't quite understand democracy, or should I say more specifically, Mr. Putin. He's trying to control things. It's beginning to unravel, but I have to give a huge amount of credit to those women who are very, very courageous in doing what they did today.
Yeah, Alain Leverger, look, I know people are talking about the men's hockey team. They beat Latvia 2-1. There's gold medals for Canada in bobsled. It's all good. Meantime, 20 miles from the site, you got Cossack police beating up young women for trying to put on a punk rock performance. What does that tell you?
Yeah, and these women, let's not forget, these women have been harassed literally for days now. Protesters around Sochi don't have the right to demonstrate near the site, and they can't demonstrate on whatever they want. We also have heard about the anti-gay law. Russia has a long, long way to go on the path to democracy still, to a full, real democracy which respects fully the right of speech of people. And I do admire also the courage of these women from Pussy Riot.
Last word to you, Mr. Bezan. I mean, obviously, we're talking about Ukraine at first, where Putin plays a big role, but here, 20 miles from the site of the Olympic Games. These are some of the most extraordinary images, widely videotaped. You can find it on YouTube, and you can see what happened here. What do you make of that? What's the government's view on that?
Well, it's completely unacceptable behavior by what we're seeing from the government of Russia. Definitely, as Mark said, and Helen, that we have Putin behind all this. And let's not forget that just last week, President Yanukovych from Ukraine flew and met with Vladimir Putin to talk about the situation in Ukraine. So if Putin is going to treat his own citizens like this, isn't it any surprise that Yanukovych is also treating his citizens in Ukraine as badly or worse, because we've got people dying on the streets now and getting beaten with billy sticks and pepper sprayed and percussion grenades and live ammunition. It's just a terrible thing. So yeah, we aren't seeing freedom of speech and freedom of expression in Russia, and at the same time we also know that not only are they targeting protesters in Ukraine, but they're also going after the press to make sure that we don't have freedom of press in Ukraine either. So it's just out of control, and that's why the West has to hold everybody to account to what's happening in Ukraine right now.
Yeah, I got to say, what's fascinating is the Olympic Games. We're talking a lot about them. People are obsessed with the Olympic Games, but boy, pull back and there's a different situation, literally the neighbor right beside what's going on there, that we've also got our eye focused on. We're not forgetting about that. James Bezan, Alain Leverger, and Mark Garneau, I appreciate your time as always, giving us the latest on this unfolding situation in Kiev, and of course your comments on that video of the